Hello everyone, this is Devin at Rapid POS, and this is a video to provide an overview of the Rapid Counterpoint to Shopify connector. Once the Rapid Counterpoint to Shopify connector is installed and you open the Items screen, there will be a button here in the bottom of the Items window titled Shopify Items. When you click that button, it'll open the Shopify Items window, and this will display the Shopify item record for the item that you are viewing. We'll go through all of the values on this Shopify item record, and then we'll go through how to create an item from scratch. The first thing listed here is the Counterpoint item number. This is what gets sent to Shopify as the product SKU. We can also send a barcode separately, but the Counterpoint item number always goes up as the Shopify SKU. Next is the product title. This is the product title that is being synced from Counterpoint up to Shopify, and it is configurable. You can choose to send the item description, the item long description, or one of the item additional descriptions. We also have a configuration setting that would allow you to control the product title in the back end of Shopify so that Counterpoint would not overwrite it. The next two values here are the Counterpoint item category and the Counterpoint item subcategory. These do not get synced up to Shopify. They are here just for display to help you identify the item you're working on, and also for filtering purposes, so that if you're working with a large number of Shopify items at once, you can filter down to just a specific category or subcategory. We'll get into that a little more when we discuss table view. The next field here is for the Shopify ID. The Shopify ID is the number in the back end of Shopify for the product. So here's our Shopify test item product, and here is the backend URL, which ends with the same numbers that are displayed here. Once the product is connected to Shopify, this ID gets sent back to Counterpoint and is always displayed here. The next value is the URL. This is the URL on the customer-facing site. This is another value that gets sent from Shopify back to the connector, and it is just displayed here for your reference. You can't edit it here. The next value is the Shopify status. We call this the Shopify sync status, and this number can be one of four values. Typically, it's a value of 0, which means that the product has already synced up to Shopify. There's nothing pending about it that would require it to be resynced. A value of 1 means that the connector will sync that item the next time it runs. So typically that means something about the item has changed. Maybe you updated the price, or maybe you sold some in the store, or you sold some on the website, so the quantity has changed. Something about it has been edited, which is going to trigger it to be resynced. The connector runs once every 15 minutes. When the connector runs, it'll look for any items with a status of 1, update them to a status of 2, and then it will actively sync them to the website. Once the product has been synced successfully, the status will go back down to 0. However, if it encounters an error or fails for any reason, then the status will be set to 9. It's a good idea to filter once in a while for your items that are in a status of 9 and remediate them. We have a separate video on our website about how to do this. If you think that maybe Shopify returned an error accidentally, or because it just encountered a problem while the connector was running, one of the things you can do is trigger a manual resync on the item. That's where you check this resync box here, and you'll see that when I click save up here, that the Shopify status will go to 1 and the resync box will go back to being empty. Now, the next time the connector runs, the status will get updated to 2 while it's running, and then once it's completed, it'll go back to 0. If it goes back to 9, that means it encountered another error and you should investigate further. You can reach out for us for help with that. The out of stock quantity here is a threshold value. Typically, it'll default to 0 unless you've asked us to default it to something separate for you. And it just means that when the quantity and counterpoint of the product, so the quantity here, reaches this value, then we'll show it as we'll tell we'll tell Shopify that the product is sold out. If you wanted to perhaps reserve a little bit of quantity for selling in store or because you're concerned about overselling or something along those lines, then you can set the out of stock quantity to any number you'd like, and that is product specific. So perhaps for this product, we'll set the out of stock quantity to 5. When there are 5 or fewer, the connector will tell Shopify that there's actually 0 left. The next value over here is show as sold out. And this is a checkbox you can use to immediately tell Shopify, well, the next time the connector runs, so within 15 minutes, display this product as sold out. This might be a helpful tool if someone calls and says, hey, how much do you have of this product left in stock? And you tell them and they say, I'll be there in 2 hours and I'll buy it all. They haven't put the transaction into Counterpoint yet, but you want to just go mark that product as sold out on your website because you know it's a hot seller. You can just go ahead and do that right here and then save it, and it'll send it to Shopify as sold out. And then when you get more back in stock, you can just uncheck this box. Otherwise, you can just rely on the out of stock quantity to always display the quantity correctly on Shopify. Continue selling out of stock and track quantity both map directly to functionality in Shopify. So Shopify has this track quantity box and they have a continue selling when out of stock box. We recommend always leaving track quantity checked so that Shopify doesn't oversell the product. If you want it to oversell, you could always select continue selling when out of stock. Shopify has more details on their website and on their help articles about how these two things function. We just send these checkboxes directly over. The next two are sales channel online store and sales channel point of sale. Sales channel online store controls whether or not the product is displayed on the online website for Shopify. So for most of our clients, they want their products to display on the online store, so you'll want to have this box checked. Some of our clients also use Shopify point of sale. They often use this at offsite events or at community events where they're selling a small number of products. They just want those products to be available through Shopify point of sale, so they have this box checked. If you don't even have the Shopify point of sale app installed, you'll never see it over here, and this box will be pretty meaningless. However, the online store box is really important. This can be used if you have seasonal items or holiday items, any type of item that maybe for a period of time you just don't want it to be displayed on your website. You want to save all your information about it, you just don't want it to be displayed on the website. If you uncheck this box, it will stop displaying it on your website. And then when that season or that holiday rolls around again, it's really quick to just enable the box and have everything else about the item preserved. The next value here is the product vendor. This maps to this spot here in Shopify. If you don't populate anything here, we do have a configuration setting that would allow you to set a global setting and send something in its place. That might be the primary vendor on the product, or you could choose to send nothing at all. If you send nothing at all, Shopify will automatically fill this in with your Shopify store name. For most clients, they don't display the vendor on their website, so this isn't that important. I know a handful of vendors who do display the vendor on their website, and typically they want this instead of being like a distributor, their actual vendor, they want it to be a brand. That's why we've made this so that you can type anything you want in the product vendor box. It doesn't affect your primary vendor in Counterpoint for the actual item. It's just whatever you want sent as your product vendor to Shopify. The next box here is requires shipping, and that maps directly to this box here in Shopify. In addition, you can send a shipping weight and a shipping unit. If you are in Canada or another location, or you would just prefer for the shipping unit to be kilograms or a different value altogether, we can set that. These are the 4 values that Shopify will allow. We can set the default for any of these fields to be whatever you would like them to be. We'll go over all of that in your Shopify configuration meeting when you first get the Shopify connector. I should pause right now to tell you that all of these fields here that we've just discussed overwrite what is in Shopify. So if you put 5 pounds here for shipping weight, that's going to overwrite what is in Shopify. If you check or uncheck this box, it will edit what is in Shopify. If I were to go in Shopify and change this weight to 10 pounds, the next time this item syncs, the next time I sell one or change the price or edit anything about it, it's going to sync up to Shopify and it's going to overwrite this with the 8 pounds that's in Counterpoint. So it's really important to remember that for these fields here, shipping weight and above, this is controlled by Counterpoint. Counterpoint is considered the system of truth for these values. However, tags, which map to here in Shopify, do not overwrite. They just add to. So if you want to add another tag here, you could do that. If you want to send like blue and sparkle as separate tags, you put a comma between them. We call this comma delimited list. If you wanted blue sparkle to go up as one tag altogether, you would just remove the comma, and then you could send another one up for blue sparkle and red sparkle. Again, if you wanted red and sparkle to be sent each as their own tags, you'd put a comma in between them. This box here is for HTML description. Most of our clients don't use this anymore, and that's because Shopify has a wonderful, what we call a WYSIWYG, a what you see is what you get, meaning here you have to type in HTML code to get things like bold text or italic text. However, if you just enter your product description here in the back end of Shopify, you have these WYSIWYG tools that allow you to edit that description. We have a configuration setting that we'll get to when we discuss our Shopify configuration guide that explains how this is used. So you can choose to use this field or to not use this field. Again, most of our clients choose not to use it and they want Shopify to be the system of truth for their product description. These last values here are alternate unit values. If you have an item set up with multiple alternate units, you can choose which alternate units you would like, if any, sent up to Shopify. This is in our latest version of the Shopify connector, which is Shopify version 2.5 that was just released in August of 2023. If your item has alternate units, and it is a gridded item, unfortunately, we can't send the alternate items in that instance yet. So keep in mind that if the tracking method of the item is gridded, then we'll end up sending the grid dimensions and the grid values as product variants. However, if it's not a gridded item and you do have alternate units, then we can send the alternate units as the product variants to Shopify. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is how to delete a Shopify item record. So if you have this Shopify item record and you want to get rid of the entire thing, you can come up here and click this X. This will delete this specific Shopify item record. Then one of 3 things will happen in Shopify. And this all depends on a configuration setting as well, a global configuration setting that you get to choose the action for. You can say that when you delete the Shopify items record, you want the Shopify product status to be set to archived. You can say that you want it to be set to unpublished, which removes it from the online store. Or you can say that you want it to do nothing. If it does nothing, then the item just remains active in Shopify. However, it's disconnected from Counterpoint, so the quantity, the price, any changes will no longer sync up. However, it's still for sale on Shopify and someone could still purchase it. And if they did purchase it, the order would drop down into Counterpoint. But unfortunately, again, you wouldn't be sending any additional product details. So be very careful when deleting the item record. Make sure that you know what's going to happen in the back end of Shopify if you do that. Also, keep in mind that if you delete the item record, you're deleting all of this information about the item. If it's a product that you do think you might sell again, or you would just like to retain this information, it might be better to just remove the product from the online store or come into here and you can archive the product. That might be a little better. That retains your information, allows you to resync the item again in the future if you ever want to, and doesn't delete everything about it. Okay, now that you've seen how the Shopify items record works, let's talk about setting up a brand new item. So let's imagine we have this item in Counterpoint and we want to send it up to Shopify. We've got all of the item record populated. We click the Shopify items button and you can see that this is completely blank. It's only filled in with what we call our data dictionary defaults, these default settings. And again, you can choose what you want your default settings to be in our configuration meeting, and you can change them again in the future. Just reach out to us and we can help you with that. You can definitely tell that this item has never synced up to Shopify before because specifically it is missing its Shopify ID. All you need to do is populate a little bit of information about this item, anything that you want to edit. Perhaps I don't want this one to go to the point of sale. Maybe I want to change the shipping weight to 5.5 ounces. And I'll leave everything else blank for right now. When you click the save button, then the Shopify status turns to 1. We get the product title and some other information about it populated. Once the Shopify connector runs and the item actually syncs up to Shopify, then the connector will get the Shopify ID and the Shopify URL and put those here. And then the Shopify status will be set back to 0. So setting up an item from scratch is really a pretty easy thing to do. And you can do them really quickly. There's just really not that much to it. The next thing that I want to show you is how to look at multiple Shopify items at one time. So here in Counterpoint, once you have our connector, you'll see this connectors in the bottom left corner. And if you click that, and then if you click Shopify, you're going to see these 4 buttons: Shopify items, view Shopify items, which you can make accessible to perhaps your cashier staff or people who you don't want to be able to edit your Shopify items. We also have Shopify Configuration and Run Shopify Connector. In Shopify Items, this opens up a screen almost exactly like the one we were just looking at. In fact, it is the exact same one. And you can key in an item and find it. However, from the screen, you can look up any item with an item record. It'll open up this item lookup and you can find any of your Shopify items in here. You can also page through a whole bunch of them if you would prefer to do that. And you can look at your Shopify items in table view, which allows you to quickly change some of these boxes. And you can, of course, edit what fields are visible here. So Shopify items in table view is a great way to edit a whole bunch of items at one time really quickly. Highly recommend getting familiar with this if you do a lot of work with your Shopify items. We have another video on our website also about filtering for items with a Shopify status of 9 that are in an error status. And I explain in a lot more detail how to use the Shopify items in table view in that video. We also have a field or a utility here for Shopify configuration. And this is a really great way to see how your Shopify connector is configured. When you first open this, it will be all grayed out. Again, we typically only give access of this view to those with an admin status. Just let us know if you want us to change that. Clicking this forward button will make your Shopify configuration options visible to you. So here you can see that for product price, we're sending up price 1. For the product compare at price, we're sending regular price. Our product vendor default is primary vendor name. The product title field that we're sending is the description field instead of like additional description 1 or long description or something like that. That delete item type that I was talking about earlier, what happens if you delete the item record? This is where you see these options. If you wanted to change one of these, you would have to come up here, click the unlock icon to enable protected changes, and then you could adjust this, and then you could save it as well, and then you could relock it, and you would have made an adjustment. Most of these things you can change on your own. However, I highly recommend that you do not change the ones in the overall section, the ones in the orders section, or the ones in the custom or the internal section. Bottom line, it's safest to change the items ones. It's pretty safe to change the customer ones. Just reach out to us before you change anything about these others and confirm that it's okay. If you're curious about what one of these things does, we have our Shopify configuration guide that goes through and explains each of these in detail. Again, when you first get our connector, we will have a Shopify configuration meeting where we'll review every single one of these options with you in detail, and you can choose how you would initially like your connector set up. And then you can change it in the future on your own, like I just showed you, or you can reach out to us if you'd like some assistance with it. The next button in here is Run Shopify Connector. And when you click this button, this black box will appear. This means that the connector is actively syncing. When it stops syncing, the black box will go away. Typically, the connector is going to run on its own every 15 minutes. We have a scheduled task that executes the connector on a regular schedule. And then, of course, all of the items with an item status of 1 are set to 2 and synced up. But also during this process, the connector checks for new orders and imports those into Counterpoint. And when it imports an order, it also imports the customer information on the order, and it either matches that customer with an existing record in Counterpoint, or if it can't find a match, it creates a new one. We have a whole bunch of configuration settings for those too, so if you're curious, check out the Shopify configuration guide for more details on that. The reason that you might want to run the Shopify connector manually is, for example, imagine a situation where someone created a new item in Counterpoint and they synced it up to Shopify and they thought everything was great about it. And then you realize that they actually keyed in a price of $1 instead of $100. You don't want to wait 15 minutes for that change to sync up to Shopify. You need it to change immediately. So in that case, you can just come in here, click the Run Shopify connector, and it'll send the change up right away. Again, when you run the Shopify connector, that black box will pop up. It's really important to not close out that box. Just let it finish running. When it finishes running, it'll close out all by itself. You just don't want to stop the connector midway through its run if you can possibly avoid it. Okay, so we've talked about syncing items up to Counterpoint. I've mentioned briefly that we also pull orders down, syncing items up from Counterpoint to Shopify. And I've mentioned briefly that we also pull orders down. So when an order is placed on your Shopify website, that order will then drop down into Counterpoint within 15 minutes. And the connector will tell Counterpoint that the order was paid for on Shopify. So a pay code of EC Shopify, essentially e-commerce Shopify, will be used. It will import the taxes exactly as the taxes were calculated on Shopify. The connector relies on Shopify to calculate the correct tax based on where the product's being sent or shipped to. The connector will import the lines on the order exactly as they were in Shopify. So if someone uses a discount code and purchases a product for $7.99 when it's normally $10.99 in Counterpoint, that line will import on the order as $7.99. So it will reflect exactly what was purchased on Shopify. We have a lot of global configuration settings surrounding how orders are handled, and all of these detailed configuration settings are listed in our Shopify configuration guide. For example, one of the settings we have is for update orders up. When update orders up is enabled, and I can show you really quick where that one is just so that you can see how this works. Again, when you come in here, you'll have to click the forward icon. We have this value here called update orders up. When that checkbox is enabled, when you mark an order as fulfilled in Counterpoint, then the connector also tells Shopify to mark the order as fulfilled. So you complete the order in Counterpoint, it will fulfill it in Shopify. It saves you a step of having to go in and mark it as fulfilled manually in the back end of Shopify. We have to do a little tweaking, especially for those of you with multiple locations to make this work. So just let us know if you would like this enabled. The order configuration settings in general are the ones that I do recommend you reach out to us and just review exactly how they function before you turn them on yourself. Okay, I have a few frequently asked questions that I get asked often, and I just wanted to go over a few of them with you before we wrap up this video. One of the questions we get asked is, do we offer additional training on the Shopify connector? And yes, this video is not the entirety of our Shopify training. If you purchase our Shopify connector, you'll get a full configuration meeting where we will go over all of the configuration options with you. Once the connector is installed, then you'll have a full training on how to use it with a member of our education team. They are fabulous. They will go into more detail about syncing items up, about best ways to process orders that have dropped into Counterpoint. They'll go into that piece specifically in a lot more detail, which is why I've not covered it here today. They'll talk about handling customer records and answer any other questions that you might have. Another question we get asked occasionally is, can you have more than one Shopify site? And the answer is yes. Some clients have both a retail and a wholesale Shopify site, or they have a special website where they just advertise only niche products or something along those lines. It does require a second connector. You'll end up with something like this Shopify 2 here that you can see in this left navigation on your Shopify, on your items window, you'll have Shopify items and Shopify items 2, so you can control them separately. You could actually have several Shopify websites. Each one does require its own Shopify connector, so that does get a little more expensive. Reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about that functionality. Another question we get asked is, does the connector sync product photos? And the answer is no. You'll need to add your product photos directly in the back end of Shopify. Shopify just has wonderful tools for handling that, much better than we could ever build. You want to just add your product photos right in the back end of Shopify. Sometimes we get asked, when the connector creates a new Shopify product, is it automatically published on the website? And the answer to that is no, because most clients prefer to have have the status set as draft. So that's our default. However, if you do want your products to be automatically published, then we do have a configuration setting for that, and we can do that. The reason most clients prefer to have it go up as draft is because that gives them a chance to edit the product description, add photos, confirm that they're happy with the way it looks, and then set it to active. You do want to create the item in Counterpoint first, then sync it up to Shopify. That makes sure that that Shopify ID, that URL, come back into Counterpoint. We have a solid connection and quantity and price, and all that information gets synced up. So that is our process. And like I said, you'll learn more about that in our full training. The next question we sometimes get asked is, can you sync inventory for more than one inventory location in Counterpoint? And the answer is yes, Shopify does allow for this. We have to do a little extra work for this to happen. Just let us know if you're interested in doing that. Next, We sometimes get asked if we can send promotional prices up to Shopify. This is where in Counterpoint, you've used that promotional prices utility to set up certain rules and put products on sale for maybe a period of time. People want to know if they can send that up to Shopify. The answer for this one is a little more complicated. Most clients choose to just send price one up as their Shopify price, or maybe they choose to send price two up as their Shopify price. So they know that they can control that price differently from what's in price in the price one field in Counterpoint. However, um, you can also always use specific discount codes for Shopify, create those kinds of ways of sending a special price up to Shopify. But some clients still want to be able to send promotional prices, and we do have functionality for that now. It is a little bit limited though, and you have to be careful with it because if you make a mistake, you might end up with a promotional price on your website that you didn't really expect. We have an entire document that explains it in detail and explains the limitations of it. But essentially, you can send promotional prices with rules that involve discount percent or discount amount on specific items or categories or whatever group of items you want. So again, discount percent and discount amount. These rules, however, cannot be based on purchasing a certain quantity because we're actually sending the price field directly to Shopify. Shopify doesn't allow us to say, only if you buy two do you get one free or anything like that. We just have to send the actual on sale price. We do have some very large clients who use this quite successfully. So if you're interested in learning more, we're happy to tell you more about how it works. It can be a really neat tool when it's used correctly. So let us know if you're interested. Another question we get asked is, can we make a modification to the connector? And the answer is sometimes. If there's a new functionality that you're interested in, let us know. If Rapid thinks we can do it, we'll get you a quote on adding that functionality to Shopify, and you can decide whether or not to move forward with that quote. We also get asked if the connector is compatible with any Shopify plugins, and this falls under custom functionality. It's up to you or you and your web developer or you and your marketing team to identify if there's any plugins you might be interested in using and then reach out to Rapid. We, in some cases, can adjust the connector to work with certain plugins. Sometimes, however, we cannot. All of this falls under custom work, so we'll get you a quote on it and we can tell you if we think that plugin will affect the functionality or will cause any issues or if we can connect with it or not, depending on what your goal is. So if you have a Shopify plugin and you're concerned about compatibility with the connector, reach out to us. We can provide you a quote on that. All of that being said, if you have any questions about our connector, feel free to peruse some of the other videos on our website. We have a little catalog of videos and we are adding more videos occasionally. So if you have questions about certain aspects or there's a video you'd like to see, let us know. We'll consider adding that to our list of things to do. We do plan to create more videos in the future, but also if you have a question that we didn't answer today, feel free to reach out, contact Rapid POS support. We're happy to help you. I hope you've enjoyed this and I hope you get lots of great information and that you're able to successfully use the Shopify connector.